In association with Jungle Gamer TV, this review is brought to you by...
Few game franchises have such a long and successful existence as Tomb Raider. After 9 games, 2 films, a bunch of theme park rides, comic books, novels, and all manner of other forms of entertainment, it's about time for the franchise to be brought up to speed for the future generations of gaming. That's exactly what publisher Square Enix and developer Crystal Dynamics thought upon the conception of the simply titled Tomb Raider. Damn, I'm glad they did. Tomb Raider is as much an origin story as it is a reboot, and as a result one of the main focuses of the narrative is Lara's development from fresh-faced university graduate to badass, puzzle-solving, head-exploding, wire-walking adventurer, and boy does it do it well. The first hour or so of the game consists of a lot of hand-holding with plenty of scripted set pieces and button mashing, but it is for a good reason. Laura's introduction to the island on which she'll spend the next few days of her life is not a kind one, and she has a whole load of crap to deal with. Her first kill is a particularly emotional moment and one that appears to have some significant impact on Lara. Just a short time later she's taking out a whole bunch of guys with no problem at all. Plenty of other reviews have seen this as a weakness, and sure, maybe there is a little disconnection between her supposed helplessness as portrayed in the game's cutscenes and her actions in-game, but to be honest, I'm pleased that the game's moved into action fairly swiftly. If Lara had spent minutes mourning over every thug she killed, the game wouldn't have gotten anywhere. As it stands, the pacing of the story and the action works very well indeed. There's more shooting than long-time fans of the series may be expecting, but I don't think this is a negative at all. The combat mechanics are really satisfying, and the cover system, which works somewhat differently from the norm, is effective. The enemy AI was a lot of fun as well. Frequently they make use of fire, which plays a major part in the game, to force you out of cover and get you moving. Far from being an annoying gimmick, this kept the pace of the action at its highest and meant that the combat was more frantic and challenging than it otherwise would have been. It's not all-out action though. There are plenty of scenarios in which a little bit of stealth would come in handy, and luckily you're readily equipped to deal with them. The first weapon you acquire in the game is a bow and set of arrows, and this is very effective at taking out enemies silently at a surprisingly long range. It's basically a silent sniper rifle. For those of you who long for the days of old exploring ancient tombs in search of riches and curiosities, have no fear, Tomb Raider has plenty to offer. While most of the tomb raiding isn't a necessity of the story, there are plenty of just-about hidden tombs scattered throughout the almost open world of the island. They each offer a unique and engaging mix of puzzle and platforming that we all know from the previous games, and usually offer plenty of reward, not only in the fun they provide, but in the cache of salvage or weapon parts you can usually find at the end. On that note, the salvaging and wider survival aspects of the game are the only points where it falls a little short of expectations, in my opinion. While looting corpses and finding salvage caches are a requirement if you want to manually upgrade your gear, you are provided with all the equipment you'll need in cutscenes, and there's no hunger system or requirement to sleep or anything like that. Even health regenerates, and pretty quickly too. There are no medipacks in this game. Additionally, ammunition for all of your weapons is just too easy to come by. I wasn't worried about running low on ammunition at any point in the game. Every corpse you down usually has at least 10 rounds on them, and there are quivers of arrows around literally almost every corner. It's a shame. If they'd developed the survival aspects a little further, it could have added a lot more tension to the game, not to mention put the player more in the mind of the character, who is desperate to get off the island fearing for her life. As it stands though, the single player is a truly excellent example of the action-adventure genre and easily stands up to the Uncharted series, with which it has been frequently compared. Not only that though, it's a hugely enjoyable reboot of Lara Croft as a character. The excellent writing provided by Rhianna Pratchett, daughter of Terry Pratchett, who you may well have heard of, as well as the pretty much superb voice performance of Camilla Luddington as Lara, results in a character whose story was a joy to follow, and who I'm very excited to see more of. For whatever reason, the developer and publisher decided that throwing a multiplayer component in there would be a good idea. Personally, I would have been absolutely fine with it being purely single player, but nevertheless, I gave it a go. It's okay, really nothing special. There are 4 forgettable game modes, all of which are just reskins of stuff we've seen before. The gameplay itself is alright. It uses all the same mechanics as were present in the single player. In particular, it was nice to see that all of the climbing and platforming mechanics were still functional, and actually added quite a lot of verticality to the gameplay. Climbing your way to higher, more defendable areas was a lot of fun. There's a slight twist to the unlock system in that scattered around the small number of maps are boxes of salvage. Just like in the single player, collecting salvage allows you to improve your weapons or unlock new ones. Other than that though, it's about as normal as it gets. It does suffer a few technical issues. It crashed 3 times in the span of a couple of hours, and there are no dedicated servers, meaning there's often quite a bit of lag, and you may as well abandon the round, if not the whole match, if you have to undergo the painful process of host migration, which never took less than a minute. The multiplayer component is a chuck-away addition to the game, which I really wouldn't miss at all. I don't doubt some people find it entertaining, and it is kind of fun, but I would be surprised if there was any sort of population in-game in a few months' time. As you probably know by now, Gaming Dragons is focused on PC games. That said, let's talk about the technical side of things. There's good and bad news when it comes to Tomb Raider, more good than bad, I'd say. For starters, there are plenty of graphical and gameplay options, and they take effect almost instantly when in-game. There's no need to restart to see what sort of effect changes you make will have. This goes hand in hand with a nice benchmarking tool, which is always a good thing to see. It's not exciting, usually benchmarks use some nice swooping camera motions over a large area, but it's certainly good enough to test performance. Graphically, Tomb Raider is very impressive. The PC port was made by Nixxes Software, and for the most part they've done a damn fine job. The graphics are a huge improvement over the console versions, with much higher resolution textures, better shading, shadows, post-processing effects. It's a very pretty game, and I'd been playing Crysis 3 before starting this, so my expectations may have been unfairly high. It doesn't match Crysis 3 for graphics, of course, but it's still a good looker. Unfortunately, there are 1 or 2 performance issues. Tomb Raider uses an AMD technology called TressFX, which aims to make hair animation as realistic as possible. While it nearly achieves the realism it's going for, though it is a little buggy, it nearly halved my frame rate. For what is a fairly subtle effect, it's just not worth it. Luckily, you can turn it off. As well as that, turning on tessellation, which added a lot of extra detail to the environment, caused frequent crashes, so that had to go too. These problems are apparently exclusive to Nvidia cards, and Nvidia and Crystal Dynamics have said they're working together to fix the problem. In fact, just today a patch was released which has improved performance with TressFX enabled considerably. Give it a couple of weeks and I reckon the performance issues will be solved. So there you have it. Tomb Raider is a thoroughly enjoyable action-adventure with plenty to offer to both old fans of the series and to new players. It's got a great story, which by the way I got about 16 hours of play from, and that was only with 68% completion. There are plenty of optional tombs and collectibles to discover. Top-notch voice acting, pretty graphics, good animation, fun platforming, engaging combat. There is very little not to like here, except for the multiplayer. I couldn't recommend it more. You can get your Steam key for Tomb Raider at GamingDragons.com.